Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, so you're here listening to Wednesdays with Willa, and I have as my special guest, Nancy Lombardo.
Hello.
Now, Blog Talk Radio is going to start very soon here, so I'm going to let that start, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about who Nancy is, because she's a retired police detective, and she's had some amazing experiences and the way we use intuition in law enforcement. So I'm so excited about this show.
You're so sweet.
And so let me make sure this is set to go. We're going to go live on show in just a couple seconds.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Lilydale Radio, featuring topics about spiritualism, mediumship, healing, spirituality, and the Lilydale Assembly, the world's largest center for the religion, philosophy, and science of spiritualism. This is Lilydale Radio.
Good morning. Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and you're listening to Lilydale Radio. And we have a special treat for you today. Our topic today is law enforcement and intuition. And I have today with me my lovely guest, Nancy Lombardo.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm really glad that you agreed to come on the show today and talk about this.
I'm excited.
Well, you're a retired police detective, so you've had a lot
am.
of experiences in that realm.
I have.
Why don't you tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. I was 17 in Jamestown, New York. I was born and raised, and I left at the age of 17 to join the military as a military police officer, which back then there wasn't a lot of females, so I was one of a few females as a military police officer, and I served 3 years, and from there I segued to civilian life, where I became a police officer. And for the first 15 years of my career, I was a patrol officer in the car. And then the last 13 years, I was a detective assigned to special operations, where I worked numerous cases.
And so with that wealth of experience, you've had the opportunity to work with a wide array of people in desperate situations and having to kind of innately know how to deal with the situation, not just from the formal training, but from a soul or sacred space, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
That's wonderful. I want to share with everyone, because I forgot to do so, there are 2 ways to listen in on Wednesdays with Willa. So you can go to my Facebook page, which is Willa White Medium, and every Wednesday I have a different guest on. Sometimes I fly solo, but usually I have a guest on and we have a topic that's a spiritual topic related to mediumship, spiritualism, faith, family, things like that. And I like to showcase that we have a lot of amazing talent and a lot of amazing people that live here in Lilydale as well. So you can tune in on my Facebook. You can like, share, follow, all that good stuff. You can also tune in on the Lilydale radio site, which is blogtalkradio.com/Lilydale. And so that's another way that you can tune in. And you do have the opportunity to call in and be part of Q&A during the show. You can call in. The number to call in is 818-739-8818. Again, 818-739-8818. And so if you want to be part of the discussion about law enforcement and intuition, that's our topic today. So as I said, my guest today is Nancy Lombardo, and she's a retired police detective. And so why don't we share a little bit about, in the focus of your career, what have been some stories that you could share with us?
Sure. If you wouldn't mind, can I back up a little bit?
Oh, sure, please do.
I'd like to just begin by saying as a child, when I was 9 years old, my family suffered a family suicide in the house that I was living at. And from that experience, I kind of felt like my family member had a problem transitioning and maybe stayed in the house. And when you're 9 years old, you don't really understand what all that is.
Right.
But I always felt like eyes, I felt a presence. I didn't understand any of that. But I felt something for sure. And because of what my family suffered through those years of trying to understand what suicide is, how it affects families, and honestly our way of dealing with it was not talking about it. That's honestly why I chose my profession to be a police officer, because and I knew from junior high school that I wanted to be a police officer, because I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people understand just different transitions in life, what people go through life, because I had experienced a tragic experience at 9 years old, and it really set myself up for the rest of my life. So in saying that, like I said, the first 15 years I was a patrol officer working midnight shift. And I worked midnight shift my entire 15 years. Yeah, and we drive around by ourselves. It wasn't like on TV where there's partners. We were by ourselves. And the town I come from is a town of about 100,000 people, so it's not a small community.
Wow.
And I was one of, at the time, there were only 9 females to a department that had 190 men. And I was the only female that worked midnight shift. So, but it's okay. I mean, it's all part of the job. I want to be treated as an equal, and I did the same job as men. We just all do the same job. We all have the same cause. But the feelings that I was able to feel as a 9-year-old definitely came into play all the time as a police officer, because you have to be one step ahead all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, all the time you have to be, just take into consideration, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're stopping a car, you're by yourself, you walk up to the car, there's 4 people in the car. Okay, picture that, and you have to know, when you walk up to the car, you have to already anticipate what they're thinking, what they're going to do, how they're going to react. And that's all coming to play before you say, hello, may I see your driver's license? I understand that I believe people might have a misconception of what police officers actually feel and think compared to the contact that they actually have with them, because their persona may come off one way.
Yeah.
But it's all because of
Authority.
everything else. Yeah. Authoritative. But honestly, from day one of being a police officer, I told myself from the beginning, and coming from a humble background of a factory worker dad, that I was always going to treat people like I would want to be treated.
Yes.
And I continued that throughout my entire 28-year career as a police officer, and it really paid off for the good, because I would think that even when I wrote someone a ticket, I usually walked away with them thanking me.
I love it.
Well, because you ended up, you communicate. You have a little 5-minute time where you actually talk. You're asking about their job or what led them to do what they do, and it turned into like a little 5-minute counseling, honestly, if you want to put it that way.
Wow.
And almost every time they walked away thanking me. So, I mean, that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
But
I love it.
But yeah, you always had to be ahead of yourself. And like another scenario, same scenario, you're going up, you're making a traffic stop, you're by yourself. Well, this time, when you're walking up to the car, they jump out of the car and take off running. That was a common scenario during the night, especially if they had drugs or they're trying to hide something. So now you find yourself by yourself, running off after them. Most people are going to do what? Stop.
Yes.
Okay, you have to be able to look past that fear, look past what you're feeling, and just go. Yeah. You don't have time to really think about it. And then say they get to a building and they run around that building. It takes everything in your gut to go around that corner and chase them, because it's scary when it's pitch black in the middle of the night.
And you don't know what they're leading you into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once again, you totally have to rely on your gut instinct and act how you feel and just go for it. And honestly, I feel that's why I'm sitting here today talking to you.
Yeah. Because you follow through on your instincts.
Absolutely.
And your intuition, and it helped you to stay safe.
Yes.
In risky situations.
Absolutely.
That most people would be panicking. You know, the fear would take hold.
Yes.
And you had to just go ahead on faith.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's explained perfectly. Yeah, and a lot of people, it's a very fine line between people that can do that and people that cannot do that, and most people cannot. Mm-hmm. But you don't really take all that in of what you're doing until after you get out of the situation.
Right.
You know, and then you're sitting in your car and you're shaking and, you know, uncontrollably, because all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, you don't even think about
the
it.
adrenaline surge,
yes.
and then the kind of shock
Yes.
of things
Yeah.
afterward.
Yeah, all that.
The physical drama
Yes. Yeah. For
that
sure.
goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
And did you notice that the energy with which you approached them made a difference substantially?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
That you kind of preset, the sacred energy in me is greeting them, so that that would also help things to go a bit better.
Well, I'm sure you've had experiences, maybe you have or have not, of been pulled over, but you're exactly right. That initial contact of what energy they feel coming at them. Is it a positive, caring energy, or is it a, hey, I want your driver's license, and, you know, or is it that strong, I got this shield up against me, I'm not going to let you in? Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, in measuring of auras, they talk about how some people have very tight auras. You know, they're always keeping it tight to them. Other people, they open their aura, and sometimes it's several yards in front of them, and it's their antenna, so they can help read a situation that's going on. And so you're having to go sometimes car lengths ahead of you.
Yeah, always. Yes, for sure.
To have that antenna pricked up and use it intuitively that way. So
Yes.
I'm glad you gave that example of having to pull them over and the way you handled it.
And, you know, I will never speak for another officer's actions or behaviors. I can only speak for my own.
Yes.
For sure. Because everybody's in different situations. I just know that I just always try to treat people correctly and do the right thing, and it's ethical, and it's a part of being an ethical person, and it's all about who we are as police officers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, after doing that midnight shift, then you moved into...
I moved into detectives. It was a huge decision because I loved working the streets, honestly. The area town I worked was a very rough area, and I actually asked to be placed in that area because I wanted to be treated like an equal. But the area had a lot of prostitution, a lot of drugs. But it was good because I got to work with people that were on the streets. I got to talk with them. You know, in the middle of the night, sometimes there's nights that you don't do anything. You know, the time goes by and you have an opportunity to just get out of your car and talk to people walking around on the streets. And I really got to know a lot of people, and I got a little bit of a reputation. They always called me Miss Nancy. So
That's what I tell my children to call you.
You do, and I always hear that, and you're so cute. I appreciate that. So having worked a lot of the prostitution and drugs in that area town, it kind of segued into me going into special operations, where we specifically worked narcotics. And then I took over the sex offender registry.
Whew.
And that's most people's attitude.
I'm sorry, it's hard. I have a reaction about that.
I understand that, and honestly, I took it over because nobody else wanted to, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of the male officers, you know, they can't work with them, they can't deal with them, their feelings come into play a lot.
Yeah.
And if you have children, there you go again.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the fact that I did not have children allowed me to be able to monitor them better and actually have conversations with them, which you need to.
Yeah.
At one time, I was in charge of over 120 sex offenders, solely. Yeah, it's a lot. But you got to remember, There's right now over 100,000 missing sex offenders in the United States of America because they don't want to register. They don't want to do what they have to do. So it's a fine line between trying to monitor them and make them do what they have to do so that we can be safe in our communities.
Yes, yes.
And I had to ride that line. If you look at it one way, I do not believe in my heart of hearts that anybody is born into this world thinking that they want to be a sex offender. Okay? I do not believe that anybody's born into this world thinking that they're going to commit homicide when they're 14 or shoot up schools. That's not how you're born into this world. And you have to take that into consideration of any person without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as that to do with the worst of the worst people, it's important to do. To not draw your personal feelings into their situation. To, bottom line, treat them as a person, even if they're the worst person of the world that you think in your heart of hearts. You have to treat them as an individual.
Even if you see that darkness, you have to empathize and try to connect with that soul within them.
Absolutely. And you see that. I mean, there was darkness. I was in so much darkness working those cases, working that scenario, that I wasn't even able to think straight until I got out of it about a year and a half ago. I've been retired a year and a half. All I could see was all that, because it's so engulfing.
Yes.
And
you had to compartmentalize in order to get through those situations.
Yes. But because of that, respectfully, I had some of them that definitely went wayward, but I had control of many of them, and many of them stuck to what they were supposed to do, as hard as it was and as difficult as it was, and that had to have been rewarding to the community, and I know it was.
Yes.
But they also knew that if they did something wrong, they would be in jail. Period.
There are consequences for bad behavior.
They absolutely knew that.
And you can lovingly and firmly deal with someone.
And that's exactly what I did. And they knew that fine line. And so I did begin to build a reputation, I would say, to where people understood that. And I started getting people that would come and show up at the front desk, victims, because they knew I was willing to listen to their story and to find these offenders and do whatever needed to be done. Can I share a story?
Please do. Please do.
I had one girl, and she was actually one of our known prostitutes. And a lot of the prostitutes have drug problems, obviously.
Yeah.
And their profession is to support their drug habit. And their backgrounds, they didn't graduate. They come from terrible backgrounds, and a lot of them are abused to begin with. So she showed up at the front desk after seeing a couple cases that I'd worked that had been publicized, asking to speak to me. And, a lot of the people were like, what are you talking to her for? There's that. I'm sorry, but there is.
There is.
Let's be honest.
Stereotype of those
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely. I took her downstairs and we had a long conversation, and come to find out she had told me the story of her abuse of her stepfather, I believe it was. And it had happened a long time ago, but we were right to the point where I could still go after this guy.
Wow.
And she's not credible. Nobody's going to believe her. And that's all part of it. You know that. You see that. I believed her. I believed her story. She was able to tell me specific details, specific areas of the house, of what had happened. And when I get focused, I promise you. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I just get focused. And I was able to arrest her offender, which brought her, it brought her relief of everything that had happened in her life. But beyond that, when the case is that old, really the only thing you have to defend, what do you think? You need that confession. You need that other person to acknowledge the mistakes he made in life.
So how do you do that? You've had to work in a situation where you get confessions.
Oh, mainly, almost always.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to compassion, a willing to listen to what they have to say, and most of the time, I think they want to talk about it, but people don't give them the opportunity, even if it's the most horrific story you've ever heard in your life.
Right.
Because it is.
Oh, so, you know, in the cop shows, they have the good cop, they have the bad cop, and playing off of each other, and that's not how you functioned.
No, almost always I interview solely by myself.
And so in that situation, you're having to bring empathy, and you know that your goal is to get a confession.
Yes.
And to have some sort of closure
Yes.
about these things. How do you go about using your intuition in that way?
Because you already know what they're going to say when you ask the question.
Ah.
I mean, you just do. Well, I have a good feeling of what they're going to say.
But that they give that willingly, that they give a confession willingly to you.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Through treating them like a human being.
And so you're listening to them
Yes.
as the story unfolds.
Yes.
And they feel good that they're sharing this with you?
I don't think they feel good.
Or how do they feel?
Like they're victims themselves.
Ah.
And that most of them are. That's just a fact of life with sex offenders. Most of them were abused. It is a terrible cycle. Most believe that it's something in their wiring that is not the same as me and you,
Right.
and something they cannot change. And sometimes they're relieved that they're caught, because they do not. I don't think people choose to offend children. I don't think that's a path anybody would want to choose to do. And sometimes and many of them, it's proven to have over 100 victims before they actually get caught.
Oh,
So
goodness.
I think they're relieved.
Wow. That part of them, that side of them, is over or almost over.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they can maybe move to the light about things again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Oh. So I want to remind people again that if you're just joining the show, this is Wednesdays with Willa, and I'm Willa, and this is my special guest, Nancy Lombardo. She's my neighbor, but she's also a retired police detective, and she has worked with some very interesting cases. And if you want to call in, you can. The number is 818-739-8818 if you have any questions. I want to there's a caller on the line. I'm just going to see if what question they may have
Sure.
for us today. So I'm going to take caller 6949. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. This is Laura.
Laura, where are you calling from, Laura?
I'm in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Well, wonderful. Well, what's your question for us today? Or did you have something you wanted to share about?
Well, I'm looking for work, and I've had a couple phone interviews on Friday.
We're not doing any reading, Laura. I just want to say we're not doing readings. Our topic today is law enforcement and intuition. So if you have a question about that topic, I'm sorry.
No, just other than just say I'm grateful for law enforcement.
Yes.
And I'm glad they caught the bomber in Austin.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
terrible.
Very appreciative of that.
Yes. Yes.
And thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Oh,
thank you.
That's really all I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura. You be well. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
No, we're not doing readings. Our topic today is law enforcement and intuition. So for those of you who want to call in to talk about that, or if you have a question for Nancy in her line of work that she's retired from now.
But I miss
can
it
do that.
terribly. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved being a police officer. I think it's something you're either put on this earth to do or you're not, because not everybody can do it. And there was not a day I didn't look forward to go to work. It just came to a point, I think, after 28 and a half years that I just mentally and physically, I'd gone through 3 different injuries and surgeries, and mentally dealing with that kind of constant stress every day.
Yeah.
I mean, every day.
Constant.
When you wake up, and part of your clothes you're putting on is a gun, and you know that you're walking out the door and you may not come home that night, that's your life for 28 and a half years. okay, every day. But that's okay, because
You signed up for it. You
I
know
signed
what you're
up
getting
for
into.
it, and I literally taught me to live my day every day to the fullest. I do not take my days for granted, and if I am not here tomorrow, that's okay, because I know I lived my life the way I wanted to live, and hopefully a good life as part of the spiritualist.
Yes.
We try to live our lives.
We do
in
try.
good life. You know.
And we do succeed.
Yes. It's all part of being a good person, and I would not have a problem with that, and so that's okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, that role of protecting and serving that officers and military take on, it's an important role to be the guardians.
Yes.
To be the guardians.
Yeah, and I promise you, even today, I'm going to be that person that's always going to react. You know, if something's happening in front of the street, I am going to be the person that's still going to jump in the middle of it, because, you know, I know what they, you know, even though I'm retired, and same with the military, you know, once you're in the military and once you're a police officer, it's always going to be a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And it's not anything I'm ever going to be able to completely let go of, because I just have so much in me.
Yeah, you're programmed in that way. It's embedded in you, and you know, and your core values have cemented that further.
Yes.
In you.
Yes.
And your understanding of your role in this world.
Absolutely.
And the good that you've done in those years of service, and that you can continue to do, kind of holding the space.
Yes.
For others in a different way now.
I do as a healer.
Yes.
And I worked at the healing temple this past summer, and I do feel that my role as a healer is continuing. I just don't have to wear a gun on my side anymore. But I truly, I enjoyed my time. I enjoy my time as a healer, because I feel the intuition still comes into play, of course, and the empathy of people, and the connection to be able to help them find their way.
And you also do that. I should mention, Nancy has a yoga class that she teaches here in
do.
Lilydale. We're very blessed to have you do that. It's at the Church of the Living Spirit.
It is on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock.
Actually, part of my way, I believe, as a police officer in dealing with the stress that I had on a daily basis was to run. In 1999, 20 years ago, I guess it's been almost, my dad had come down with diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And he actually left everything he knew in Jamestown and came and moved with me in Oklahoma.
Wow.
And I was able to take care of him the last year of his life, which was very touching to me and rewarding to me also. But it was difficult, you know, I'd have to go to work, have to come home, help my dad out. But I'd like to share with you something. Excuse me. The morning my dad passed, I had went downstairs to let my dog out. Mm-hmm. And I came back upstairs, and I happened to look in the bathroom, and I saw my dad just sitting there like with his head down, like he was very, very sad. And I thought, what's wrong with my dad? You know, that's weird. I need to go check on him. So I ran and I grabbed something, a split second, grabbed something out of my bedroom and went right to the bathroom. Well, my dad had already passed, but he was not sitting. He had already passed, and he was laying on the ground. So I know what I saw with my eyes.
Right.
Was his spirit.
Yes.
And I know what I saw, and I was just like, you can't change it, but I saw my dad that moment after he had left his body. He was sitting there hesitant to leave, and I will forever have that implanted on my mind. But it was beautiful that he wanted to share that moment with me, but it wasn't until I came here and further understood
that you put it all together,
that I could put that together.
Yeah.
But him giving me that moment also definitely helped me understand life and death a whole lot deeper.
Yeah.
And was able to incorporate that 20 more years into my job as a police officer.
You know, so many people abhor the thought of death, and they're scared about that, and they're, you know, it is a scary thing to some extent to watch someone pass.
Yes.
But we can learn something from it too.
Yes.
We can learn to overcome our fear. And I do feel that some people, when they've observed someone passing passing well, if you will,
Yes.
if you will, for the lack of a better term, that it helps them understand their soul and how souls work in the universe and how there is life after life and there are no dead, that life continues, and that we are a spark of the divine, and we have unlimited potential for love and peace and joy. And so I think it's wonderful. There's so many stories people have of sharing that moment with their loved ones of passing.
I totally, yes. And that was, but I had also on the flip side and working the streets and had been with people that have not died in such a beautiful scenario.
Right. There are the others.
Just like drive-by shootings and getting that call and being with that person on their last few moments of their life that probably wasn't in the best frame of mind at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely see the difference of someone that is in the love and light and someone that's not.
Yes.
And there's really, even though you're with them and you're trying to help them in those last final moments of their breath, it's difficult to watch.
Of course.
So it's two complete sides of the
coin. It can be very messy.
Yeah.
Emotionally and physically, and you want something better for them.
Yes. But I think maybe hopefully in just being with them in those final moments, hopefully everything maybe releases.
Well, we don't die alone. We have angels that gather in around us, especially during those kinds of moments. And so nobody really dies alone.
Absolutely, yes.
We do have the opportunity to embrace that which is of higher way and higher vibration, and the angels assist in all of that. And I do feel even in those kinds of traumatic events that happens.
Yes.
And
I think you're exactly right. There's like all the way, and then at that very last second, I think you can see that.
Yeah.
And feel that, for sure.
Sometimes you can see like the last breath, and it's like, and you can see the essence letting go. That usually it's commonly referred to as the silver cord. You stay attached.
Yes.
Your soul stays attached to the body until that absolute moment, and then we let go and really reunite with that which is of a different spiritual dimension.
Absolutely, yes. I've witnessed that on several occasions.
Oh, wow.
And it's beautiful in its own right.
Yeah.
No matter what the scenario.
Yeah. And I think that it's good that someone like Nancy, if you're having to pass in a traumatic situation, it would be great to have you with your high level of compassion and doing the right thing, setting that intention for them too.
Yes. There was, I guess you would call it the part of natural law that takes place. We had, when I was, my 15 years of working in patrol, there was a time period that we actually had a serial killer in our town that was targeting our prostitutes and taking them one at a time. To a total of 9 of them ended up showing up, passing, and they'd find them in a ditch, in water. I knew every single one of those girls. I had contact with every single one of those girls. And I can't say that I felt the fact that they were scared for sure, but they had to make money. They would not leave their profession per se. They needed to make their money. I would warn them they need to get off the streets. But the very last girl that was taken, I had actually arrested her 2 weeks prior, and I took the time to have a conversation with her. And at the time, my intuition, of course, came into play because I really felt a strong sense of her being in danger. And I couldn't explain that to her enough to where she actually took it seriously, sadly to say. And sure enough, like I said, 2 weeks later, she was yet the very last girl to be taken and was eventually found murdered. And I just have to say that it's just, we don't have control of those things.
Right. we do get premonitions, we do get inklings, and it's not so much for us to change.
Exactly. It's not for us to change. Yes.
The events. It's so we can be stronger in the moment when it comes. We're not given that information in advance to make us suffer or to make it our fault in any way. It is so that we can do the best we can by those people and hold the space for whatever happens. So that when everybody else is in shock, we have and so it is.
And so it is. And so it is. Yes.
And so many people, my clients, myself included, we get those intuitions, and that's why I feel we're given that in advance, so that we can have a sense of, okay, and that is the next step, and this person has free will. Like,
Absolutely, yes.
You were stepping in and trying to say, hey, you're heading on this path here.
Yes.
They can either choose to take notice of that or not.
Yes.
And that's their free will engaging in spiritual natural law.
And you're exactly right. And that played out throughout my career, to look at it that way.
Yeah.
As difficult as it was, and then having to let go of situations time and time again.
Because it's not your spiritual homework. It's theirs.
Yes.
And you can only observe
Yes.
and assist to your ability without doing it for them.
Right. And that's difficult when people don't want to make changes in their life, or I mean, that's a difficult thing to deal with. But
it is.
But you're right. You just have to eventually let go and understand that it was their path, and it was just natural law playing out.
Playing out in that.
Yes.
I see we have another caller. I'm going to take caller number 6705, ending in 6705. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, my name is Alice from Ohio.
Hi, Alice.
I'm glad to be on.
Aw.
I want to thank you for your service, first of all, and for the show. I'm a yoga teacher, and most recently in Central Ohio, we had 2 officers killed in a domestic violence run. They went in and they were both shot, and it's a town over from where I live. And so I did a class to allow the spouses of officers in our location to grieve and let go and whatnot. And so in that period of time, I felt angels, I felt spirit, that I'm somewhat intuitive, but not in the context of really understanding what was going on. So that was my comment. It was a beautiful thing. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you've done in your career.
Thank you so much.
The other question I had is, when you have interviewed people that are suspects and trying to get, a confession and that, can you feel very strongly, can you see some of the things that have passed that they have done, or anything like that from the spirit give you that information from another place ever?
No, I wouldn't say I had premonitions, if you want to say, as to what they have done, but I could definitely, I consider myself to be an empath for sure, and I could definitely feel their pain. I could definitely feel what place they were coming at from what they did, and I think they understood that I felt that, and I think that was better able to allow them to communicate with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just think I have a best friend who's a cop too, who's also a female, who's also retired, and I think the societal glue that you give as far as being a woman in the profession, and then the intuition and all of that, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate this show today. It means the world to me.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alice, for calling in.
I did see about those police.
And thank you for your show.
Oh.
I'm kind of a newbie to your show, but I never see it on when it's live, and it's like it's Wednesday. I'm home. I'm watching. So thank you so much for
you're welcome.
And having it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thanks, Alice.
Okay.
I always keep up with, unfortunately, all the sad ambushes of police officers that have happened recently. Is just horrific.
It is.
My time on the police department, I was a member of the Honor Guard, and I went to many, many funerals It was a complete honor to put that uniform on and attend many officers' funerals, the ones in Dallas, the surrounding areas, and the officers that come together for this is overwhelming. It's touching, and it's definitely a part of what I wanted to give back respectfully to the officers that gave their lives, because that could have been my life at any given time. And so I feel for any time a police officer is killed in the line of duty, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's something that seems to be happening, and I know I pray for it, for
Absolutely.
all of them, and for their families.
And I'm so saddened by the reputation they have gotten, and I know that there's good cops and bad cops, but I promise you the amount of bad cops are probably like less than 1%.
It's like with other professions, you know?
It's just like anything that it just gets so blown up in the media, and if you were to put all the good that police officers do on a daily basis, and I know that some of them might not show it outwardly, and that's just part of the persona of what we have to do, the shield we have to keep up. And I'm probably one of the few that just was able to let that shield down a little bit because of who I am rooted as a person. And being a female, I'm sure, helped a little bit more, because we do feel more.
Yeah.
We just do, naturally.
Yeah.
That's just I'm not as strong as a man when it came to fights. That's just naturally too.
Right. Women are physically not as strong. It's just the way the world is.
I had to work at being physically strong when those fights broke out.
Yes.
But it's just sad, and I really think they are getting a bad rap. And my heart goes out to all of them, for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough profession. You're supposed. They train you. They tell you and you have to keep your dukes up.
You definitely keep. I mean, you keep that up.
You've got to be able to be ready.
And you got to remember, most police officers, and it's a high percentage, go home. They isolate themselves. They're addicts. They drink because they don't know how to deal with all of this stress.
It's hard.
And the suicide rate among police officers is much higher than the average citizens because of the stress that they're under. And so it's all these hidden...
It's easy to burn out in that world, because if you can't separate from that particular reality for a while.
And you can't. You can never separate from that reality. I didn't separate from it for 28 and a half years. You can't separate, because you have to go out the very next day and do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And you never know. It's not like a job where you're going to go and you know exactly what you're going to do. You never know from moment to moment what scenario you're going to get into.
And they can only train you so much. The rest is your intuition.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have clients that are police officers, and some of them are having a reading for the first time, and they're just like, and I don't know in advance that they're a police officer. Like, some of them don't look what I would imagine.
Exactly right.
And a lot of times it'll come out in the reading, because their loved one in spirit will give me that symbol, because I have symbols I associate with certain things, or else the person in spirit was, or it's really interesting how that unfolds. But you can see things kind of open up for them as they're having the reading, and to know that those people that they've had in their family, or people that have died from tragic circumstances, that their soul continues has been really helpful for them in their own understanding of the world, and then what they bring to the table next in their lives.
And my exploration of spiritualism has so helped me with that. Since being retired, and just being able to explore and understand so much better everything I was going through for so many years. It all came together like a puzzle of what it all meant, and the journey everybody has to take, and tragically or not tragically, and it just all started making sense to me.
It's wonderful when you start to understand the spiritual underpinnings of the world. It helps you to have faith in moments where having faith is tricky. It's like, how am I supposed to believe in anything at this point? But it holds you in the embrace of God.
Yes.
And it helps you on your path in interacting with people.
90 seconds.
Oh, time goes by so
That went by really fast.
I know, it
Oh
always
my
does,
gosh.
every time. I know there's more we could talk about, but I want to mention that our next show will be My next show will be Wednesday, March 28th at 10 a.m., of course, same channel, same time. And my special guest will be Emmy Chetkin. She is the president of the Church of the Living Spirit, which is a spiritualist church here in Lilydale. And our topic is becoming a spiritualist. 60 seconds. And there are other radio shows you can tune into with the Lilydale Blog Talk radio shows. Tuesdays at 8 o'clock with Colleen Vanderzijden. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. with John White, no relation. And Thursdays at 10 a.m. with Celeste Elliott. We're all registered mediums here that do the shows. And I try to, like I said, have a different topic every week. And I'm so delighted that you agreed to come on the show, Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. And you're just wonderful.
Thank you.
Seriously.
I think it's important that we share about these kind of topics. And I really appreciate you being open to sharing publicly things that have happened with you and how you've dealt with them. I think people have really appreciated this show. So thank you everyone for tuning in today, and thank you, Nancy, and we'll see you next week. Lots of love to all of you. Bye-bye.